Okay, we are live now. Okay, so we're going to talk about public leadership and crises. Yeah, is that how you would say it?
Crisis.
Or leadership in a crisis?
Yeah. We're doing public leadership too. Okay, yeah. I guess we'll start with public leadership.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Didn't we do that in the last one? Wasn't that the last video topic?
Yeah, we did talk about it a little bit at the end.
I think this one is about what? Public leadership in a crisis? Yeah.
All right. Okay. We'll go with that.
Well, I guess to like prepare somebody, I don't know what at all levels means, but I would feel like the leader would just have to be realistic and focus like on the main goals of the people they're leading. Like I don't know, I feel like it's really easy to like want to have like a big like exaggerated goal to like fix everything, but there's gonna be some people who are disappointed or like that aren't gonna get like it that they want to. So I think it's just realistic about how they go about it and like what are the like basic things they need in order to get out of that crisis or get through.
So I heard about half of that.
I was gonna say I couldn't hear any of that.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
Can you, in the nicest way possible, can you put your audio on mute when you're not talking? Because I think that'll help. There's like some feedback coming from, I think it's from his phone.
Okay.
You're like in the car.
Okay, I think that worked.
Can you guys hear me better now?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think it was literally, yeah, I feel bad, but because Mark is in the car, so it was just like.
All right, when Mark needs to talk, just unmute yourself and then.
So basically, I just said that like when you're in a public leadership position and you're in a crisis, that I don't know how you would prep somebody at all levels or prep different people at different levels, but I think one, focusing on like the basic needs that need to be like met, or the basic goals that need to be met, because like I feel like going in there with too high of hopes, like wanting to like please everybody and wanting to handle every single problem, like is kind of unrealistic. So being able to just like know what the basic like necessities and goals are is very important, just so you can get those out of the way and not try and like save and solve everything at like once.
Yeah. The lecture for this week kind of like used the phrase know your enemy. So like just know what situations like you're likely to face. They use the example of like 9/11 and like BP. So obviously BP, which we'll like talk about in a second, but they know there was like a risk there, and like other companies, I'm sure like have their risks associated with it. I know when like I worked retail, we didn't have like crisis situations, but we had like kind of plans for when like systems went out. And even today at my new job, like every program was down, so we had a backup, and when the backup failed, we had a backup for that, and then when that backup failed, we had a backup. So like there's systems in place so that people aren't like running around crazy. Just like having kind of a plan on file for those situations that are likely to happen.
Yeah,
I completely agree. And it's like in the book in chapter 11, it talks about the challenge of responsibility. So like as a follower, you still make choices and you still have consequences. But when you're a leader, you take responsibility for everything that these followers and different people do. And so when we're talking about the public, like a public leadership position, to me, you just have even more responsibility, even more pressure. And then like coming back to what Kaitlyn said about enemies, like when you're in the public eye, you're going to have more enemies. And then I think you're even just going to have more things happen that you didn't expect, but that they should be expected.
Mm-hmm.
Like for public leadership, I think last time we talked about politicians, but I think in this week maybe it makes more sense to talk about like company CEOs or something.
Yeah.
So like Kaitlyn mentioned like BP and all that, and just like kind of tie the two together between public leadership and crisis management. Like in the book, it was like the 3 stages of a crisis, and it said something about like the pre-crisis
Yeah.
is the longest. So you're usually in that stage the longest, I guess. So you're between crises the most.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like one of the biggest things in preventing a crisis is at least being aware that it can happen to you. Like like for example, like BP, knowing that it's a risk that you have, and you need to take precautions for it. Like at my job, it's probably like it's highly unlikely, but I know they do like shooter drills. Like if someone were to come in with a gun, or
Right.
like a fire drill, like at school. Like if you take those precautions before something happens, like a crisis, at least you have like a general idea of what to do about it. And I think that's where like the leadership role, like a public leader, comes into, especially if it's like a big corporation like BP, where you can kind of keep good relations with the public, but also make sure your team's ready to deal with the crisis before it happens.
The first thing that kind of came to my mind was, and Tim just touched on it, but it was like fire drills in school growing up. It was like, how many jobs have we done where we've practiced like different drills now? And that, like, I mean, you could look as a teacher or a principal as like a CEO, I suppose, but it's like a principal, he or she, is preparing, everyone there for a crisis. And it's interesting, we don't do that really in jobs. I've worked one job, and it was for Chase Bank, where we did fire drills, and I was like, boy, this feels like a kid kind of thing, but at the same time, it's like, I guess at least someone's preparing for it.
Yeah, I think it's good to like what came to my mind when I was like reading the prompt or whatever is like once you have a crisis and they talk about like preparing leaders at all levels. I think it's good like in something like the situation with BP or something to keep everything kind of like a uniform, like if different levels or managers or CEOs are going to talk to the public, to keep everything pretty uniform. And then like if you don't like have the exact answer to the situation, then that just kind of refer everything to like one person or something to try to keep the answers like in line, so everyone's not kind of like giving out different information and allowing like the public to twist words back against each other, to make it seem like you guys are all on the same page, even if it is crisis and there might be crazy stuff going on behind closed doors. Like when you address the public, to be able to keep everything so it seems like you guys are all on the same page. And if you don't have the answer to a question, don't like try to give a response. Just literally say something like, I won't be able to answer that question right now. You could direct that question to like, so and so. So like if something bad happens, it can kind of at least seem like, that like all hell hasn't broken loose. Like it's still, you guys are still like under control and just working things out and waiting until you have definite answers instead of trying to give answers that you don't have.
Yeah, I was gonna mention like ethics, because I feel like in a crisis situation, that's when a lot of unethical things happen, because usually the situations can be new and like they don't know how to handle them, and there aren't any like protocol on how to go about them, and that's when a lot of unethical things happen. And so I guess having somebody in like PR or somebody who knows how to deal with the public close by during all of the like decision making processes and stuff like that, to make sure like nothing, I don't know, that they could get a lot of like backlash for happens in those kinds of situations.
Yeah, what kind of reminded me, like obviously there's a lot of like scandals or like, I don't know, within corporations. Like the most recent one that comes to mind is like the Uber thing with their whole CEO. But when it comes to like preparing all levels, I'm sure like the bottom most employees, like at the support desk for Uber or whatever, were given, like Andrew was saying, like a statement to give. And then like as you go up, like they're briefed on more information about the situation. So I'm sure like the lowest employees don't like know everything. They're just kind of given the information they're needed. And then it just kind of works its way through management. So I think that's kind of like how preparing leaders at all levels to respond is just kind of working its way down.
Yeah. Okay. I guess we'll kind of transition more into crisis. I was going to mention too, I said earlier about like the whole pre-crisis thing, but I was going to say like after a crisis in the book, it mentions something about learning from the experience. And I wanted to say something about like how important that is. So there'll be people, I can't think of one off the top of my head. Actually, you know what? There'll be like a job I worked in retail before. We had a manager that was like, he was basically committing fraud. And he got caught, and then he was basically given a warning. He was really lucky, and they didn't like fire him, and they're like, okay, like don't let this happen again. And literally 2 days later, he did it again. So like it's one of those things where if a crisis happens to you, whether it be something that you caused or something that you can't control, that you actually have to learn from it. That way, if it ever does happen again, you're at least prepared for it. It kind of gives you. It's kind of like a cycle where something like you get prepared for something, and then it happens, and then you realize that it didn't work, or what you did didn't work, or it did work, and then you tweak it, and then kind of start over for the next crisis, and just kind of wait for that to happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyone else want to jump in here?
It's like coming to me. I don't know. I mean, it's obvious, like, this is what a class is about, but there just needs to be communication. I think that's where, like, all problems occur, is that whatever's being thrown at the company, this business, like, whatever it is, it's not necessarily going to be, like, solved through communication, but we can at least understand where everybody's coming from and then work from there. Like, a lot of the issues that I see are just people literally don't talk to each other. People think they're right, using their pride to like justify their actions, just like crazy things. And so like when a crisis happens, it's like, what do we do? You know what I mean? And people should assume like the first thing we're going to do is we're going to communicate. We're going to talk to who we need to talk to. And I think it's good what Andrew said about like where you are in the company. Like you should know where your thoughts, like what you're saying should be directed to. Like you shouldn't be like, oh, who's in charge? Like who do I talk to? Like you should know that there's like a system of order, like who you're going to go to and who they're going to go to, that like different things are delegated so that it's not just like havoc and just craziness, because things are going to happen no matter what. And we can't prevent certain things from happening, but we can choose to communicate. We can choose to at least think and not just like be crazy.
Yeah, well said. All right.
I think that's a good one to end it on.
All right. Bye, guys.
Adios.
Cool. Thank you, everybody.